Hi everyone, I'm back for chapter 18. As it turned out, the lair of the sea witch wasn't really that far from the anchor, which was good. The farther they progressed, the deeper the water got, and that much water, for some reason, didn't agree with the moonlight. The light must have gotten bored or lazy and given up before coming all the way down to the bottom. Fortunately, just as the last bit of moonlight gave up, an eerie glow from below appeared, giving them enough light to see by. Look, Philip said, his fishtail swaying gracefully as he pointed down at the glow. Fallen stars. Jack followed his gesture to find a scattering of fallen stars, each one only a bit larger than his hand, glowing just as they had in the night sky. They always seem to fall into the ocean, he agreed. They must just land here and gradually die, losing their glow. Okay, seriously, May said. No, that's a starfish. A fish, Jack said, swimming closer. It doesn't look like any fish I've ever seen. A starfish, May said, gritting her teeth. Look, I'll show you. Philip quickly followed her and pulled her back away from the star. Beware, princess, he told her gently. We do not know what dangers the stars may hold. It's not a star, May shouted. It's just the same shape. It's glowing, May, Jack pointed out, though trying not to get her going. Just like a star. You have to admit it makes sense. But it doesn't, May said, almost pleadingly. It's a fish, or something like a fish. I don't really know. It may be not really a fish. It's something else. But it's still a fish. An animal. Kinda. Like coral. I know it's not supposed to glow, but there's aren't supposed to be mermen either, and I'm all right with that. But I will not say those are fallen stars. You know, this really isn't important, Jack said, gently turning May away from the fallen stars. Let's just move on, shall we? Whatever the fish, whatever they're doing, they're giving us enough light to see by, right? May just looked at him sadly. Well, yeah, I guess. Well then, he said with a smile, we'll just leave it at that. We must be about to the sea witch's lair. It is right there, in fact, Philip said, nodding in the direction they were going, just at the edge of those fallen stars. They're not! Remember, happy thoughts, Jack said, noticing May's fishtail fading in and out as she grew more frustrated. Let's get on with things. The faster we find the sea witch, the faster we don't run into any mermen. As they all began to swim off, May steadily avoided looking at the falling stars, repeating something happy quietly unto herself. Philip fell in beside Jack. Do you find it odd that we have yet to see a merman? The prince asked him quietly. I find it fantastic more than odd, actually, Jack said, gritting his teeth and thinking of his own happy thought over and over. Maybe our plan is actually working for a change. Ever think about that? How likely is that? Philip countered. Do you remember traveling to Malevolent's castle at the trip by the river? Vaguely, Jack said, rolling his eyes. Try to recall, Philip said, clearly missing the sarcasm. We never approached within 10 feet of the river, yet mermen watched us the entire way. He glanced all around them. It worries me that we have yet to see one. The ocean's a big place, Jack said, awkwardly turning himself in all directions. But all he could see were empty water and glowing stars. Maybe there are more in the river because they know that's where humans live. Either way, I don't see any here. The question is, can they see us? Philip said solemnly. I will keep my sword ready all the same. Jack shook his head. We can't use swords, you know that. Not unless it's absolutely necessary. And if they are falling for our disguises, pulling out swords off our backs will completely give it away. Mermen use tridents, not swords. Unless they attack, our weapons stay hidden. Philip sighed. I never liked this plan. Blame Bluebeard, Jack said, half smiling. If he'd just thrown us into the dungeon like everyone else we've met, none of this would have happened. The ground in front of them was littered with grotesque, stunted plants, 2 lines of them bordering a path of glittering rocks that led toward a dead-looking cave. As Jack and Philip caught up to May, Philip shook his head. As obviously happy as I am, this seems a bit unnatural for the home of a fairy queen, my friends, he said. We should be cautious. The stones are kind of nice, Jack said, pointing down at the path leading to the cave. I think those are eyeballs, May said, swallowing hard. Of course they are, Jack said, and then pushed some bile back down into his throat. His tail wavered again, and Jack immediately began imagining a world without eyeballs, or sea witches, or any of this, fixing the tail in place immediately. Well, I guess we should go in and see if she's home, May said, but no one moved. A minute passed, then 2. the bent plant swaying with the current. Maybe she's not even there, Jack said. Right now, that was even an even happier thought than any of his daydreaming about non-magical worlds that didn't exist. Then we should go in and see if we can find out where she went, May said. No one moved for another minute. We always seem to get in over our heads, May said, breaking the silence. Why do we ever think that we can do this stuff? It all sounds so much easier in theory, Jack said, but we really need to do just that already. Philip? He gave the prince a push forward. Philip yelped and shot a dirty look Jack's way, but turned back toward the cave and began to slowly swim toward it. Jack moved to follow him, and with May right behind. As they swam forward, they created little ripples that sent the deformed plants lining the path into ugly little dances, almost convulsions as they passed. The strange thing was, the dancing continued after the water settled back to the ground. Probably just the water's currents. As they got closer to the cave, it looked no more inviting than the path of eyeballs and bent plants. And it wasn't as if the plants were uniform. There weren't even any sort of beauty in symmetry. No, instead, they were each a different size, even a different color, which was odd. In fact, some of the plants were a dark gray, a color Jack never would have associated with anything plant-like. Still, it was hardly a leap to think the Fairy Queen's magic had affected the local plant life. The eyes Jack just completely ignored. No matter how much Jack would have wished it otherwise, he and Philip did finally reach the mouth of the cave. Inside, shadows seemed to swirl and bubble, a nauseating effect aided by the eerie glow of what a few fallen stars were still around. Despite that glow, the going would be tough, though, without more light. I know what I said, Jack said to Philip, but I think I have to use my sword. Philip frowned. I dislike relying on such an evil object just for light, he said. However, we appear to have little choice in the matter. Jack sighed. It can't be a good sign that no matter what we do, we have little choice. Philip nodded back up toward the boat. We could always turn back. Jack sighed. Wouldn't it be nice if we could? The prince clapped Jack on the shoulder. You are a decent fellow, Jack, Philip declared softly. If this is to be our death, it has been a pleasure to fight by your side. I'm sure it has, Jack said, and then took a deep breath and pulled out his sword. Instantly, the entire area lit up with a ghostly white glow, as the translucent sword's inner liquid lit on fire, though again it flickered oddly. What was causing that? Under the light of the sword, the plants on the path began to wither and shake, and the eyes between them shone like small suns, but other than that, the light didn't seem to attract any unwanted attention. At least not that was revealing itself. Looks like you might have been right about using our swords, Jack said to Philip, carefully searching for any sign of mermen. I hate to be optimistic here, but I think we got away with the light. Small victories are still victories, Philip told him as May swam over to them. Why, she said, is there any other kind? I wouldn't get your hopes up, Jack said, bringing the sword around to shine it into the cave. Philip watched the sword, his expression unpleasant. I swear, Jack, if you had heard the stories I had about the eyes. Not all of them were bad, right? May said. I mean, the one who talks to you in your dreams sounds okay, right, Jack? The eye speaks to you in your dreams? The prince asked, dark suspicions flashing over his face by the light of the sword. Whoops, May said, looking around at anything but Jack. This probably isn't the time to discuss. You never told me, Philip said, still focusing on Jack. This really isn't the time, Philip, Jack said, agreed, trying to get around the prince, but not able to maneuver himself with the agility May had. We're already making enough noise. We need to get in and out before we bring an entire army of merfolk down on us. Then why are you causing your sword to glow so brightly? Philip demanded. Jack started to yell back and then realized the prince was right. Why was the sword glowing so brightly and getting even brighter with every second? Oh no, Jack said quietly. Oh yes, said a remarkably familiar voice from all around him. Probably shouldn't have used the sword, Jack, Leanne said. Not when someone's been messing around in your head. Jack quickly pushed the sword back into its sheath, but as he just about raised it over to his head, the light exploded for like 3 sun giants rolling their fireballs right into each other. And I'll be back next time with Chapter 19. I'll see you guys then.